him.
Well, yes, and he's had some technical challenges. He had an issue last night watching the game. He was at he's now one of us here in Omaha. So he had a little bit of an issue on watching the game because of his internet connection. But yes, he is moving today. And now, you know what? Just like that, we have him. Let's welcome in Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7, who, by the way, we say thank you because you're taking time. It's a very busy day for you. Good morning. How are we doing?
Good. I apologize. I was in the middle of moving something in when the phone started ringing, and then the movers showed up at exactly the same time. And so we've got organized chaos over here. So let's do it.
All right, we'll make this quick. I kind of, for people that follow the great coverage, we saw BC and Brunt's down here last night on 24/7. You guys have wrapped it up with really, I think, some spot-on comments. So I will start here. Is 1-0 all that matters about last night?
In the most base level sense, yes. I mean, there's certainly things about last night that felt a little bit too on the nose for year prior. There was things last night that you maybe came into the season expecting Nebraska wouldn't have as much issues with. But at the same time, it's hard to know exactly what they went up against. I think at times Cincinnati looked like they could be a mid-level Big 12 team. I think at other times it felt like Nebraska was a play or two away from just taking total control of that game. And so they had opportunities to do that. They weren't quite able to get it done in that regard, but they still left with a victory. I mean, it still was the exhale sigh of relief versus the, pounding of whatever was around you and in dismay and disbelief. So I think you take the win, certainly, and the sort of very catchy headline writer that I am, 1-0 and room to grow. I mean, I think that's Nebraska football right now.
Mike, happy moving day. I feel terrible for you. Moving is the absolute worst. So
thank you. Moving day feels a lot different here than it does Saturday in Augusta. I'll tell you that
much. Amen to that. Hey, if I told you 2 months ago that Williams-Nwaneri would be one of, if not one of the most effective players in Nebraska's defensive line, you would have said what?
I would have been really intrigued. I mean, they did, and I don't know whether it was by design. I don't know if he came on strong late. I don't know if just when we had the glimpses that we did or the people that I talked to consciously sort of left him off the list of guys who were impressive. Everyone said physically, there's nothing else like him really on the roster, which is saying a lot because there's some other big dudes on that defensive line, but he just sort of has a suddenness to him that goes with that 6'7" frame that you just don't find a lot on the defensive line. What I loved to see last night, and this kind of cuts both ways. You don't want to see your defensive lineman having the backside pursue as much as Nwaneri did, but he was doing it and he was dogged in his pursuit of these ball carriers, and he had multiple tackles where he was pulling guys down, after they had broken past the line of scrimmage. So that tells me the effort was really high from him last night. Obviously, he jumped on the fumble. You would love to see a little bit more in terms of plays stopped at the line of scrimmage, but that's not just entirely on him, and same with the pass rush as well. But I think overall, a great debut for Nebraska and something everybody can look forward to seeing as he tries to build upon as this thing moves forward. But I don't know anyone that could look at how last night went for Williams-Nwaneri and not be excited about what could be for someone who has as much potential as anybody on that football roster.
Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7 joining us. So your task was giving out the grades or writing the story with the grades after the games on Husker 24/7. Rushing offense, you gave a D. I want to talk about the quarterback. You gave Nebraska's passing offense last night a C. We've talked all morning, and people that were watching the game kind of knew what Cincinnati was going to do. Nebraska just took what Cincinnati gave them. Cincinnati said, hey, come into the phone booth with us. Nebraska said, okay, let's play in the phone booth, and we don't want to get outside of it. But the question is, and you alluded to this, and I know you tweeted about this, and Matt and I have talked about it, was the lack of explosive plays last night what Cincinnati was doing or the personnel that Nebraska has involved in the passing game?
I think it's hard to say at this point. I think it's a little concerning, the most explosive that any pass catcher looked, and this shouldn't take anything away from what was quietly one of the better performances last night was Luke Lindenmeyer. Every time that guy caught the ball, he looked like a little tank running on the field that nobody wanted to get in front of. So get him the ball more, let him run with that kind of ferocious nature. But other than that one play with kind of Ja'Cory Barney or, it shouldn't be this hard in college football to have explosive plays on your offense. And we're now in a third straight year where it feels like every drive for Nebraska to score has to be double-digit plays that features multiple third down conversions, that features a bunch of average depth of targets of less than 5 yards from Joe and Raiola. It's one thing to say, like, Cincinnati wanted to keep it in front of them. I understand that. It's another when you look at the total body of work over the last 2 seasons for Joe and Raiola, and you start to wonder why they can't hit on more things downfield. We know they like some of their wide receivers. I think Isaiah Hunter is going to be a really interesting player. We know that Cortez Mills has a bright future ahead of him as a freshman wide receiver. I think I wanted to see a little bit more from Dane Key, but he had a couple nice plays in there as well. I have no doubt that Dana Holgorsen was comfortable with Nebraska taking the routine play, but at some point you have to get bigger chunks of yards. You can't survive entirely on these 13-play scoring drives because it's just not sustainable. That's how Nebraska's defense in the past operated. They wanted teams to think that they could do that because eventually you're going to run into, whether it's Henry Rudkowski being called for the 15-yard penalty or a sack, or, Nebraska had a lot of issues yesterday on second and medium. They would go to run the ball and they'd either get no yards or lose yards, and that puts you in third and long or third and medium instead of a first down or third and short. So they have to find ways to make this offense not look as plodding as it does. It's like they have an entire plow that they're pulling with them as they go down this field. It's just, I don't know what it is, but for an entire, year, last year and this first game, there just doesn't look to be any explosiveness. And that is really concerning because I know Ja'Cory Barney is explosive. I know that Dane Key can run pretty well for a big guy. Same with Isaiah Hunter. Same with Cortez Mills. Same with, some of these other guys. Like, maybe it's just a one-game thing, and I don't know what Akron and Houston Christian are going to be able to tell us in that regard. But I looked at that offense last night, and I think they have a really tough time when a Michigan comes to town because they love when teams try to just, dink and dunk down the field. They think they can win in that environment. I don't know if Nebraska can.
Cortez Mills had 6 snaps yesterday, but Gary and I were talking that it felt like you knew when he was out in the field, and he had a catch that honestly, if it's a better ball thrown by Dylan, it probably is one of those explosive plays that you're talking about. Is he on the list of guys that you want to see get more snaps? Do you have a list of guys that you're like, I actually after one more game, I want to see him get more opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've thought about it that sense yet, man. I don't know that I have a list of guys where it's like, okay, I want to see a little bit more here. Frankly, I just want to see Nebraska have more success with the guys that you expect to play in those positions. I mean, you went out and you got Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter to help with your passing game, and through just one game, the smallest of sample sizes, if you will, it didn't feel all that different for their passing game. You went out and you got Dana Holgorsen to help expand your offense. Matt Rule doesn't want a mediocre offense anymore. And again, it's one game and it's one opponent. And that opponent was designed to run a shell defense to keep everything in front of you. And they did a nice job. But, that doesn't mean that you can't break a tackle. It doesn't mean that you can't slip somebody between 2 defenders and watch them run for 25 yards. Nebraska is the only team in the country that we watch run crossers that never seems to have an opening where their pass catcher takes off for another 15 yards after he catches. I don't know what the yak numbers were last night, but they seemed like they would have been pretty terrible.
108 of the 243 in the passing game were yak numbers.
That's not good. On 42 attempts.
No. Hey, let's go to the defensive side. I think there's a lot of things defensively last night happened that we went, yeah, that's what we were expecting. Some areas we're expecting a little bit more and for it to look different. What is your level of concern? Has it changed at all about the defensive line after last night?
I think the way that I've talked about this, and this is where it's a little unfair because I'm going to be harsher on the offense, who played a relatively clean game, and maybe where I'm going to be on the defense. We've known this is a unit that's going to need some time. Mm-hmm. This is a unit that isn't going to be a finished product on day one. And that's true of the offense too, but it's the one where I feel like they've invested pretty heavily and they've got some experienced guys, and I trusted what they have there. And so my expectation is Nebraska's offense is going to carry it. Nebraska's defense won them that game last night. It may not feel like it, and I'm not just talking about Malcolm Hartzog with that interception. Early in the first half, Nebraska's defense took over that game for a little bit of a stretch there. Cincinnati couldn't do much. We know that, at one point, Brendan Sorsby had 33 passes in the second half, 33 yards in the second half through the air. So Nebraska certainly played, I think, well enough defensively in spurts, but that run game defense is concerning. I mean, it felt like if Cincinnati was a little more committed to the run, they could have certainly hurt Nebraska in a bigger way last night. So I think that John Butler is going to have to go to the lab, try to figure out if there's something he can do scheme-wise. I think you're going to have to cycle through defensive linemen to keep guys fresh. I think we're going to see more Riley Van Poppel in the future. I thought Keona Davis had a couple nice hit and sticks. Yeah. I think Nebraska's back end, not the front seven, but the defensive backs, aside from one time I can recall with Deshaun Singleton, who came up a little bit wild, I thought the back end of the defense did really nice in their run fits. I thought the linebackers over pursued a lot last night. Evan Pryor and Walker had some cutback lanes where they just got Nebraska out of sorts and were able to grab another 8 yards because they just simply cut it back up the field as they angled to the sidelines. That was an issue last year. I think that's something Nebraska gets a little bit wild in their pursuit because they want to flow so heavily to the ball. But those cutback lanes are just where teams seem to kill them.
You're talking about the run defense. Let's talk about the run offense. You gave it a D on your grades. More of a offensive line problem or a running back problem?
I think it's a combination of both, and that's not to take anything away from Emmett Johnson, who carried a heavy load on his shoulders last night for what Nebraska needed to do offensively. 32 touches, some in the neighborhood of like 135 yards. That sound about right, total offense. So, I mean, you loaded him up, but again, it shouldn't be this hard to generate explosive plays. And I think Nebraska is getting a little cute playing this many offensive linemen. I love using that phrase, by the way. But, like find 5 guys. You talked about how talented and how deep this is. Nobody cares. Find 5 offensive linemen you're going to play. Go with that. Get your best 5 out there. And against Akron and against Houston Christian, use those 2 weeks to prove that you can run the football. And I know we were talking about explosive plays in the passing game. Find stuff that works. Find some running backs behind Emmett Johnson that can help. I thought both, and it was, again, incredibly small sample size. When Emmett Johnson wasn't carrying the ball, the rush offense looked rough because it didn't feel like it was quick. It felt very mechanical. And so there's just a lot of work that needs to happen in this run game. And it was something, BC and I talked about Thursday before the game where, hey, is Nebraska going to be able to line it up and run on defense that wasn't good last year? They weren't good in the past. And we know that Dante Corleone is a 3-time all-conference player. But Nebraska's offensive line, if this is going to be what we think it is, that was not a great start for them. So I think if they can use these next couple of weeks to kind of build some confidence, find some stuff that works, and figure out how they want to organize their ground game, they've got to get more than what was the long last night, 12 yards? Emmett Johnson on a 2nd and 10 just was able to rip it off to the corner for 12 yards. I mean, you've got to do better than that when you're running the football. It shouldn't be this hard to play offense in 2025 with the way the game is right now. And Nebraska just makes everything look hard offensively.
Mm-hmm. And I think the long run he had was 16. At least there's one thing. So, of a little disjointed, choppy first game feel. Nebraska never turned the ball over. They had a couple of times, either a drop pick 6 or a Dillon fumble that they did not lose, so they're +2. Special teams. Do we realize how big a night it was for Archie Wilson in his first game ever?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story of this game, once you get beyond Nebraska winning a close game, and all of that. The story of this game is just what a difference competent special teams makes. I mean, think about all of these guys that were brought in and performed well last night for Mike Eckler's group. You have Archie Wilson playing in his first ever football game of any level, and he's asked with 2 minutes and change left to pin the opponent, and he does it to the best of his abilities at the 9-yard line. Excellent job there. You have Kyle Cunanan, who's brought in. Nebraska had a shaky first quarter. They need to answer the 3 points from Cincinnati. He's got a 52-yard field goal. Doesn't have a field goal, I think, of over 49 yards on his resume at this point at the college level. Knocks it down. I mean, that ball never moved. It was inside the upright. There was no doubt about it. And he made the other field goal. And then the other one, you don't say his name because he did everything as you wanted. There was no snapping issues. There was no concerns with the hold. The special teams operation in terms of the specialist with kicking, really good last night. I mean, there's still some things you want to see do better. I would love Nebraska to just take the ball at the 25 instead of pretending like they have the ability to return things. I would love Ja'Cory Barney to not attempt to return when there's no blocking in front of him. I know, Gary, you tweeted it out about Nebraska with, the 2 punts and everything, but and the 2 attempts there. But I just, you're going for the block. I mean, at least just take the ball. But overall, you couldn't be happier if you were someone who had to sit through last year's special teams tire fire with how they played in this first game, and a lot of them in really big spots for the first time in their career. And they stepped up and they met the moment, and that's what Mike Eckler wants. And they move into the next few weeks and can build upon that. If Nebraska is just simply average at special teams, it allows the rest of the group to kind of find themselves.
Yep. We're on to Akron, and you're back to moving. Hey, welcome to the Big O. Enjoy today. I hope it's stress-free, knock on wood. And as always, appreciate it. Look forward to your thoughts throughout the weekend with you, Brunsey, and BC.
Yeah, how much Joe Moorhead talk do you think we're going to get over the next week or so?
Oh, boy. I don't know. They didn't score last night against Wyoming. They won 11 football games in 7+ years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
He said his 4-win performance last year was the most they've had since 2017. So there was some positivity going into last night, but looks like Wyoming took that away.
Yeah. The 24/7 NIL program probably is more profitable than the Akron football NIL. So that's enough said. Schaef, thanks again. Have a great holiday weekend. Hey, Joe Moorhead is asking the same thing. Do we? Do we? Hey, thanks, Schaef.